Okay, welcome. Friday afternoon. Of course, you get already quite some sessions. Hopefully this will be also interesting for you. So hopefully I will keep you awake with some slides about the real product that we did over the last couple of months. First of all, I put a couple of buzzwords on this slide. So it's always good to have all the buzzwords on one slide. So yes, it's about cloud-centric, it's about DevOps, it's about microservices, and about OpenStack. And that in just 30 minutes. So first question to you always, are you more from the OpenStack, or are you more from the microservices, or the DevOps, or the cloud-centric? Yes. Yes to all? No. DevOps. Pure OpenStack lovers? Pure cloud-centric?
Is cloud native, cloud-centric?
Yeah? I think I have almost everyone now in the audience, so my final checkpoint is my own checkpoint and my own law in life, but I will tell you afterwards. Who will never ever raise his hand, whatever I will ask? You're really smart people, because my law in life is just do that trick when you do yourself a presentation. How big the audience is, there are always 2 to 4 people who will raise their hand. But at this moment in time, you're really smart, and nobody did. Oh, thank you. So, because we are smart, let's then have a look at the kind of things I want to talk through. And maybe have some questions in the meantime, but we can also have some in-depth discussion afterwards. So what I will do is give you some background, describe the product to you. I will not mention the name of this company, because it's in that sense not a public reference. And I'm also using some of their slides. So, therefore I'm not mentioning the name, but you can maybe figure out who it is. So it's a retailer with no presence at this moment in the Netherlands. Yet. So, a couple of points over here, and of course also this part and the lessons learned and the way forward. And hopefully you will do that in about 30 minutes. So, let's start first with why should you do something? And that's also a little bit of the structure of this presentation. First start with a more why, then more about and how, and then we will end with a kind of what. So first of all, of course, so I'm talking now about a retailer who's already there for quite some years. So they have all the kinds of shops and so on, and the bricks and the mortars and so on. And they notice also that it's not enough anymore to have that kind of shops. So they also went into e-commerce already quite some years ago. But now they figured out that they did they tried it out, but it's not like a real sales channel for them. So they really thought, okay, what do we have to do then to really make it happen again, so that we can really attract people to it, to really serve our customers and so on, and what kind of innovation do we have to do? And it's nicely then summarized in this statement. I think it's true for most companies, if you're around for already quite some years, so you have to innovate yourselves. So likewise for IBM, more than 100 years old now. If we were doing exactly the same thing that we did 100 years ago, nowadays you could argue that there's no value in it anymore. To give you good point. To give you an example about that one, because if you know our location in Amsterdam, we had a factory across the street, and that's not a typewriter factory anymore. But there's still some notion that there were some typewriters built over there. But it's now called B Amsterdam. And in that building there are all kinds of startups. So the 1, 2, 3 kind of persons companies. And working with no typewriters, but with IBM Bluemix. So in that sense you could argue that then the typewriter of 100 years ago is now replaced by IBM Bluemix. So the building is still there. People are still working with IBM technology. But over time the typewriter has emerged a little bit and evolved. But good point. And that you will see also then with the company I will describe them as a product in this one then. So retailer, let's say a traditional retailer, did some tries out with e-commerce in the past, but now really thought again about it. How can you then really make it a sales channel for us, and how can we then really serve our customers? And yes, I know this is a technical track, and I will give you quite some technical details, but it's always good to have this in mind, why a company is doing it like they did. So So if you take a look at this one, so they tried it in the past, and on the top end part of the slide, you see how they did it. So in that sense, in a quite traditional way, so it's a monolithic architecture. So everything was coming together, and then under something magic like the leadership, it wasn't happening. And as you can imagine, this is kind of spaghetti kind of architecture. And I know that at your companies and organizations it's not like this, of course not. But at this company it was. And so what we decided to do over there, to really then to have this split, and so to make it really an independent working streams. And I'll give you examples of that one, how it is then implemented. So you see, for instance, for the Explorer search and so on, to really have that kind of architectural and development streams. So really in parallel, and with that, they can really anticipate on the changing market circumstances, and they can really have this sales channel up and running faster and in a better way. So, if you take a look then, and we'll go down from more the why than to the how they did it. And what you see over here is some key designs and the aspects of it and the drivers. So first of all, it's about rapid time to market. And what you see over there, how you can realize that, is really by a verticalized architecture. So that you really have then this kind of independent work streams, and also then this continuous delivery. It's also a good question, are you doing continuous delivery already? Would you like to? Oh. And also then, coming close to that one is also, of course, that you have to have a fully automated unit and acceptance test. So it's also quite some notion about testing in it. And of course, you have quite some nice concepts. They tried it out in practice, like the shift left testing and so on. If you know that one, canary testing, A/B testing. Everybody familiar with that? Doing it in practice? In that sense, you should. They are doing it now, and they see quite some value in it, so that you can have that kind of, let's say, new testing procedures, and also then from a time perspective, but also then from a cost perspective. Next to that, they wanted to have full in-house control, so no vendor lock-in, so that you can switch quite easy from one vendor to the other, but also then have a broad provider capability, so that they can have not just one cloud provider, but have multiple ones. And with that, it's also good to have then a payment scale-out capability. So again, this architecture, this verticalized architecture, with this notion of event sourcing, if you know, if you are using it. So that's Martin Fowley, if that's a no name to you. He did quite some work in that domain, so that you have then an event and that you can really track down then what has happened to an application, and it will stay then with the application over time. And why that's good? Because you really want to scale out, and we are talking then about a retailer on the web. So maybe one day you have one customer, tomorrow you have 1,000 customers, and then the day after 100,000 and back again. So you really have to have this kind of architecture in place to make that happen. Some other ones, of course, about the database. So that's really then distributed. And like I said it again, if you have one customer or 1,000 customers, it then comes down, for instance, to your database and what the sizes of that one are. And of course, this one was all based upon OpenStack. So that was really then the foundational layer. So to really make this kind of things happen. And also then on the next slide, you will see some other ones. So of course, you want to attract people to your platform. So you want to have a great user experience. You have to have it through your mobile channels and so on. And that was a breakthrough for them. Of course, that your organization is completely different, of course, to really have a 100% customer orientation. So that's not only then a technical discussion, but also then involve the business people. So what they want, what the customers want, and really inject it then in what you are doing then in the IT environment. So in that sense, you could argue that's not only then a DevOps environment anymore, but maybe even a business DevOps. So really integrated teams and going over all the layers. The good news is also if you are IT folks, are you IT folks? All of you? Then you're very attractive in the market. So what you see also over here, it was also for them a main issue to really have attractiveness to IT employees. And so what they wanted to do is on one hand side build on this open source components, but also then what they have built to share it also then as open source, and of course be active in all kinds of communities that you can think of. So with this in mind, what they have done is really change the company from, let's say, the old-fashioned way of doing things, from waterfall and so on, to really agile and DevOps. And what they now can do is, over time, really do this kind of changes really fast, and deployments and so on. And what you will see also is then the things over here, so that you really can collaborate across disciplines, and that you can really frequently deploy all kinds of changes in the process. But this one is of course also very important, fail early. So that you really know that in a process, okay, I'm trying out some things, is it working, is it not? And then you fail fast, and then you can change a couple of things around it. And of course, continuous validate all the things you are doing, because in mind, you have a customer, you have a potential customer on your website, and you really want to attract that person, and you really want to have the experience to that person. So, to make it happen, as one of the earlier slides, it was very monolithical. So it was really a spaghetti kind of architecture, so it was really hard to maintain it and to provide some new functionality and capabilities in it. And what we have adopted over there now are really the concept of microservices. And what you now can see is that's really working in practice. And they can really have then these parallel streams about search and the other streams. You can really do it with microservices. And what you can see also is that they are now capable of, if they have a marketing campaign, they can really make it massive or less, etc., because of this architecture. And so it was not only then the notion of these microservices and how to build those and how to maintain it, but also then from a project-based structure, and also then from a cultural perspective. And that's, I think, the hardest part. So in that sense, technology is never the problem, as a statement. The problem is more in the process, in the culture, with the people you're working with. So what you see over here is then these phases in your whole DevOps culture. So you have here the people who are in the user experience to the other streams and so on. And of course, here, these folks in the evaluate are very important, because what you are delivering, you really want to make sure that it's capable of attracting people to it. And underneath, there was a whole group of people working then on the platform and to engineer it and to make it stable, so these other folks can work on their streams. As you can see, it's not then just a stream, a team, and so on, but it was really collaboration between the teams, and also then the crossovers you can think of. So it's good to have all kinds of disciplines in a working stream, not only the IT folks, but also then from the operational folks, but also from the business folks, and to really make that close connection, so that you can make this kind of pipelines workable. One step deeper then. So what were then the design criteria and the solution architecture? So first of all, of course, it has to land somewhere, your web shop. So of course, you still need some computers, you need some databases and so on. But of course, you want to be there. It sounds like open doors and so on. But also in the cloud domain, you want to make sure that whatever you build, that is there, and that the people can have the experience that they need. So for that, still the notion of separate data centers is good. So because of disaster recoveries and so on, so you should have that. And of course, you should have then a load balancer on top of it to really make sure that the load can be up and running whenever it's needed. So what you now see, because of this microservice-based architecture, you can also utilize this kind of environments. So you have then really independent releasing for functional teams. And you see also then some other things. So this notion of open source, they did it in all the kind of layers that were needed to build such a web shop. So they used, for instance, Jenkins, GitLab, and so on. And like stated, on the foundational, so the infrastructure layer, they're using OpenStack. And why OpenStack? Because, like said as one of the design principles, they really want to be vendor agnostic. So they really want to go from one provider to the other. And with OpenStack, of course, you have that capability to go from one to the other. And you can have it also then in different versions. So you can have it in the public, you can have it in shared, and you can have it also in dedicated variants. And what you see over here, with that, they were really capable then of building such a web shop and giving them from an infrastructure perspective the agility and the flexibility that was needed then to build really up these capabilities on top of that. But if you take just one step back, what were then the hopes and what were then the doubts about having OpenStack then for a web shop? Because we started this one about 1-2 years ago, the question they had, is it already mature enough? Is it then really production ready? And of course, if you know OpenStack, there are quite some features in it. You can describe it also as a feature glut. So there are quite some features that, that's maybe a nice question. Have you ever used all the OpenStack features? Percentage-wise then? 90%, 80, 70, 60, 50? And that's also what they experience. And of course, if you go from one version to the other, then it's also then the question in such an environment, how stable is it? And is OpenStack there to stay? Or is it just, as stated here, a flash in the pan? Is it just happen to be here for the 1 or 2 years? And also then about, because you're now building something, can you really maintain it? And can you then really also migrate it or update it and whatever? So is it then forward and backward compatible? And of course, if you take a look then at open source, there are quite some providers of open source. Are you then really using the open source version, or are you going for one of the Red Hat and so on versions? If you take it from an hope perspective, you see OpenStack is taken up by quite some companies across the globe. So in that sense, it's a big player, and it looks like it's enterprise ready. And take into account that was in discussion about 1-2 years ago. So there's also a very large community. So there are quite some cool features in it, so that you really can then build all kinds of attractive capabilities. You can also have then a mixture of bare metal and virtualization. So maybe for some workloads it's better to have a bare metal, and for other ones it's maybe better to have virtualization. And you don't have then this vendor lock-in. So you have this two or even multi-vendor strategy, and you can have also then this kind of provider picture I just give you. And what I'm thinking of is as a vision that you can have a kind of reverse auction model, so that in the future providers can bid on those resources that are needed by this retailer, and so that you have a kind of reverse auction model in place. Because they are retailers, and of course they always want to negotiate about price. If you now take a look at some operational requirements as a starting point, because their staff was quite limited with OpenStack capabilities and knowledge, so they wanted to have a managed service by an external provider. They want to also, because of the expected workloads and the characteristics, they want to have bare metal for the Cassandra database. So they wanted to have open source as stated for the virtualization layer, so being vendor agnostic. And so not then a specific vendor version, but really the open source one. And because it's really then at the core of their business, at that moment in time they decided to go for the private and dedicated cloud deployment model, so that they can really have a kind of close control on it. And maybe over time they will go for the public version. Take a look at some physical resources, so quite some impressive numbers over there. And what you can see, I think on this one, so if you take these kind of numbers into account, that the pilot was up and running quite easily, so to say. So there were 2 soft layer data centers, if you know the proposition of IBM, so the infrastructure as a service. So this one was located in one country and this one in the other one. And with this kind of architecture on top of it, and that one was set up in just 3 days. Key point in this one is not so say to have your OpenStack up and running, but main discussions are going always around the network and how the network is set up, and network ports, firewalls and so on, and that can be very time consuming. So always take that one into account. And are the network guys in the room? Oh, then can I say that like this? So make them also part of your team. Eh? So don't see them as the kind of enemy that they are blocking everything, but make them part of the team and demonstrate what you want to do and how they can also help over there and what their thinking is to make it happen. So we see over here, this was the pilot phase, so quite successful. Multiple countries as stated, so multiple data centers and so on. And this one was just set up in 3 days. Because we did quite some preparation, and especially then about the network integration. Because otherwise you can wait for some months. That was the pilot. It's now in production. What you now see is that it's a managed service. So they have still some limitations in development stuff. So there's an opportunity for you over there if you would like to work for this retailer. But they have increased ops team, but it's only from 2 to 5. And like I said, it is really critical then for their business to have this up and running. But there are just 5 operational folks for it needed. And what you see, they're really a strong belief in open source. So what you see is then a multi-vendor for production and a DR for dedicated. And maybe over time they will move more and more to the public cloud because they see quite some growth in their client base, and so they can make more and more advantage of the public cloud. And what they did is, what was quite good for them, is that they also took OpenStack as a part of the whole DevOps cycle. So it was not talking only about the microservices, the apps and so on, but OpenStack as the infrastructure layer was also part of the whole DevOps process and the whole continuous delivery pipeline. And that really made them a success so that they can really then deploy and think about new capabilities in a very fast way, just a couple of days. And so keep the momentum there and keep also then the things up and moving and very quickly. Like I said, in cloud you always have to think also about disaster recovery and so on. So what they did, they've chosen then Blue Box. If you're familiar with this one, that's a managed service from IBM. So it's a private cloud as a service, you can describe it, based on OpenStack. And what you have here made available is then a disaster recovery environment for them. So that on the one hand side they have the production environment up and running, but let's say something is happening, then this Blue Box environment can take it over and then still provide the web channel then to the customers. So if you now take a look, some description then of why they have done it, so the notion of microservices and DevOps and so on, and of course there's more to it, but I got already the 5-minute signal 2 minutes ago, I think. So some lessons learned. The first thing is always it's good to avoid some things. Eh? So are there some lawyers in the audience? So like I said before, technology is easier, so you can make it work in just a couple of days. But the negotiation with a contract and then from all parties, so it's not only then from the organization itself, but also then from the suppliers and so on, can take some more time. And also then given some regulations and so on that you have to take into account. Like I said, this particular example is a multinational, so then you have then some local laws from this one and some local laws from that one, and then it can take about 6 months or so that the lawyers can come up with the contract that can be signed. So like I said, technology is easy, contracts negotiations are a little bit less easy. If I take it from a cloud perspective, this one is also good to remember, so we experience this one also, that a virtual machine is of course there, but it can crash. And actually it will crash. So always take into account that it will crash. So it's a kind of law, a physics law maybe even, law of physics. so you have to handle it. So you have to take precautions, some measurements and so on, so that you can really handle that things will crash. And last on this one, and maybe over time this will change, hopefully. OpenStack is not OpenStack, and every OpenStack instance is different. So if you ever have implemented an OpenStack environment and compared it to somebody else, look for at least 7 differences and so on. And also in this case that happened. Like I said, there's quite some nice features in OpenStack, but there are so many of them. So you really have to be careful about who to choose, and also then make it then consistent over your whole environment, so that you can maintain it quite easily over time. If I take it from a positive side, it's a very useful base to have this kind of environments up and running quickly and also maintain it. And so it's also then the liberty to choose between different players. That's really then one of the benefits of OpenStack. And I love this one. A good provider engineer, you can solve everything. So in that sense, the technical guys are always the heroes, not always notified or noticed as the heroes, but in practice, in real life, they are really the heroes that can make these kind of things happen. And what you see now is as a kind of vision, where are they going to in the next phase? So more and more about automation, especially also about service discovery, and also then have some active data centers, so that all data will be in sync. So across the different countries they are in, and that you also have then all data in sync. And also maybe they will host it and also on other websites, and they will make a decision about public versus dedicated and let's say the more private things. So what you now see is that over time we have learned quite a lot in this environment, and we've seen also an OpenStack in practice, but also then not in an isolated way, so to say. So it's good, of course, to have then the OpenStack infrastructure layer up and running, but it should always be interconnected by what the things you want to do with your DevOps team, and be also then part of your DevOps team, and also be part of then the business side of things. Because why are you doing things, and why will this then be a successful web channel for your company, or whatever you choose to build on OpenStack. So with that, I think I've minus 10 seconds, or maybe just stayed in time. So, was it useful? Any questions?
I'd like to react on one of your points.
Yes.
Back in 1991, there was this big major Usenet discussion between Linus Torvalds and Andrew Tannenbaum about microkernels versus monolithic kernels.
Yeah.
And Torvalds objected to the microkernel that you need a messaging system to keep everything in pace. And Andrew Tannenbaum replied that it was like taking a fully functioning C program and rewriting it in BASIC.
Yeah.
History has proven one of them right and one of them wrong.
Yeah.
Aren't we repeating it with microservices?
Ah, very good question. Are we repeating the same mistakes that we have made in the past? Very good question. I will give you a more philosophical answer and the more to this one. I think humankind is quite known for making the same mistakes over and over again. I will give you an example. It was about economy will only grow. So because of this technology, economy will only grow. It is prosperity for everybody. What technology was that? I don't know the English translation, but the trekschuit. So you know the ship moved around by a horse. So that introduction was about 2-3 centuries ago. So you could argue that that has been proven wrong, that the statement prosperity for everybody because of the ship and the horse. So that's the philosophical answer. I think indeed, for this and the microservices and so on, that you should be very, 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 very careful about the things you are doing. So in that sense, one of the basic principles that we as IBM have for cloud is choice with consistency. So in that sense, microservices are not the answer to everything. Cloud is not the answer to everything. Being a cloud advisor, I'm stating to you that cloud is not the answer to everything. But hey. But as people, you should still think. And still think about, okay, what happened in the past, and also take it into account. So I think, indeed, that if you do it not in the right way, so to say, that we'll do the same mistakes with microservices, and maybe even worse. Because I showed you then the spaghetti kind of, this one will be even worse than if you do it not in a correct way. So maybe then a spaghetti soup or something like that. So in the spaghetti architecture, you can just follow the lines, but in the soup, then you can think, okay. So in that sense, the good news is that technical guys like us are still needed. And so the message is then think. And yes, you can do things and you can achieve things, but still think. And she was giving me this kind of signal, but...